Hello everyone, how you guys doing? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day, and today we are here with a video on the dirty secret to the old school RuneScape market crash that no one's telling you about. Every day I hop on YouTube and I look around, and in my recommended there is a new video about the market crash and how it means that the game's coming to an end, that RuneScape is going to be at a screeching halt here soon, and I just find it wild. So I wanted to go ahead and throw my thoughts out there. I know I made a video about a month or two ago talking about the gear market crash that was going on, but I think that the heights that people have taken this to is just far too extreme, so I'm here to talk about it. If you guys enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like, and if you really enjoy it, make sure to subscribe. I'd appreciate it greatly. But with that said, let's go ahead and get into the rationale. We'll start with the basic premise. Is the market really down that bad? How crazy is this getting? So I'm going to start on the RuneScape wiki looking at some historical price data for two different items, and I think that these items are going to be a great example of how you can look at something and understand if it's truly impactful on what the people are thinking of these items, or if it's just naturally the attrition of the game playing its course. So here I have the Armadyl Chain Skirt, an item that is hard to attain in the game because Armadyl is one of the harder God Wars dungeon bosses to do, in my opinion. A lot of supplies have to be used there as well, and you have to be pretty high level, so hard to get, and almost everyone's going to need Armadyl in the game. So this is an example of a stable item that has a ton of demand and not a lot of supply. Over the last 2 months, not much has really happened gear-wise. It actually bounced back up a little bit and then it's fallen back down, but overall it's actually stayed the same and retraced a little bit, but also came back up. Looking all time, here we can see obviously back in the day it's going to be a lot cheaper. This isn't the beginning of old school RuneScape right here. This is just like the beginning of the GE, I do believe. So back there things were going to be a bit cheaper. However, we saw a nice surge here in 2017 and then another surge here in late 2018, early 2019. Overall, I'm guessing those were related to range gear updates and metas that had shifted, along with Zor becoming pretty prominent, having good drops, along with Vorkath kind of pumping in some stuff in that regard. So here, I mean, if we look at it on this long time horizon, like what's really happened? We're at the prices that we've, for the last 3 to 4 years, Armadyl Chain Skirts have hovered between 30 to 40 mil, and suddenly they go down to 28 and everyone loses their mind. Like, I don't really think it's that wild. I think that this big drop that you're kind of seeing recently has to do with both metas being called into question because of combat related updates and tweaks that are going to happen in range, along with, I'd imagine now people are probably not as likely to be inside playing RuneScape all day because COVID restrictions are sort of lifting, and on top of that it is summertime, so you combine those two things, you're probably going to have some of the summer fall off that we typically will see. So I don't think anything wild is going on here, and this is a nice example of an item that is stable and well in demand in the game, and that's important. You need an item that people actually want, because if you bring in an item that people don't really want too much or has a ton of supply, that is where you run into an issue. And here we have a Berserker ring. So looking at this graph all time, we can see that it's actually gone down a good bit in price. It used to be 3 to 4 mil at its high, then started to fall to 2 almost at its low in 2017, came back up to 4, and now is back down to 2, or 1.5, 1.6. This is an example of something that people should not look at and make a note of the RuneScape economy based off of. And I feel like this is a problem we're running into, is people are kind of looking at these things and using them as reference points. Berserker rings are never going to go up in price. You can't have them maintain their value or go up unless there's some sort of new update that causes people to change their opinion on it. But at the end of the day, each account's only going to need one of them, so it is in pretty high demand, but at the same time, every high-level player that has the ability for noted DK bones is going to be farming all of their Dagonoth King's task here, and they're going to be pet hunting, and they're going to be doing all these sorts of things that would cause them to kill DKs so much more than they would ever need to. So there's just going to be so many more Berserker rings pumped into the game, and over time, if you don't have a new player base constantly to sustain that supply that is coming into the game, the prices are going to drop. So I don't think this is anything wild, and I feel like using items like this is very detrimental to the average player when you use it in the case of this is the market dropping, because people might believe that this is actually the market dropping, but no, it's just, this is what happens when there's too much supply of an item or there's not enough demand of an item. Over time, it's going to play its course. To be honest, on items like that, another example is an Occult Necklace, just things that are on really silly tables that are just farmed into the game too much. There's almost nothing you can do at this point to really get them to the value they should be at, because now too many have been farmed into the game. It's a lot like whenever I don't believe that the clue scroll helper should be a thing, and I wish that the clue scroll helper would just go away so that clue scrolls could be normal and actually take time. But even if they took it away, those items are already so far into the ground that it would take so much time, and I don't know if they would ever actually rebound to make it worth it. So not only do I believe that people are using the wrong sorts of items to draw conclusions on the market crash, I also believe that, naturally over time, these items should go down a little bit, because one, they are going to be farmed in the game over time, but two, there are more and more items that we are getting in the combat triangle that we have to spend our money on. As we know in the game, there's not a ton of new highest tier items, because we don't really like that in old school RuneScape, but there are some more niche items. An example would be Dragon Hunter Crossbow, Dragon Hunter Lance, staffs. There used to just be a few that were pretty cheap. Now there's the Kodai, the Sanguinesti, the Harmonized Orb. In my Slayer guides, I remember I used to make them back in the day on a second channel that no one's ever heard of, but back then I would think about 1, 2, or 3 weapons to bring. Now whenever I make a task video, I have to go through 10, 15, 20 different weapons I have to think about to potentially bring, and that's just an example of where the game's kind of gone. Naturally, that's going to happen. So there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to understand that and accept it and know that that is going to play a role in the market. An example of this at a really high scale to kind of show you what I'm thinking is whenever you're in the spot that I am, really late game, I've maxed an account, I have a good bit of bank. Even I can't afford everything in the game. I've played for a long time, I've sweated a lot of this game, but at the end of the day, if I wanted to buy the big ticket items, say I want to buy a Twisted Bow, a Harmonized Orb, a Scythe, an Inquisitor's Mace, and an Elysian Spirit Shield, if I wanted to buy those 5 things alone, that would cost me 4.5 bill. That's not including any other high level things that I could buy, not including any of the tons of different sets of gear that I could have. There's an enormous amount of money that has to be paid to own all of the items in game at this point. I'd imagine to get most of the gear in game, you're probably looking at 7 to 10 bill, and that was never the case in the game at all. So to say that the market is collapsing because some of the gear at the lower levels that aren't as coveted and get farmed in the game more are going down, I don't think that's crazy. I think the gear market's doing absolutely fine, and I think people are just overreacting to a few examples. But say even then, maybe you wanted to make some of those low to mid level items that are tanking go back up in price. How could you go about doing that? Personally, the ways that I see is you could make them harder to obtain, which is pretty difficult. Changing bossing metas and having people be okay with it isn't really something we're about. People like the game to be kind of the same way that it's been, and that's just what old school RuneScape is, so it's reasonable. You have to make the item extremely useful in game potentially, but I mean, buffing old gear just to make it worth more in price is, you can only do it so much, let's just say that. You can do it here and there, but you gotta pick your spots. Those are the only organic ways to make something really keep its value in game. Beyond that, if you want to do something a little bit more artificial, you could have really good death mechanics where items are actually lost. I know that's pretty crazy, but when items go out of the game, that means that you're going to have to replace those items with new ones, which is actually a good thing. However, no one's ever going to vote for it because people don't like the idea of losing their items. So that one is just basically crossed off. And then beyond that, another artificial way to pump value into an item would be to create a new tier of item. Then people can see, all right, well, there's an item that holds a lot of value in this category. Obviously, the market's doing fine. It's very artificial, and we personally don't enjoy that one either, because again, old school RuneScape, we like it to be somewhat old school, so we typically don't go for that one either. So you can see the struggle here. It's very hard to have an item be in that nice mix of all of those things. And some final points to round out why I don't think the market is going to be that bad. At the end of the day, one segment I am a little bit fearful of, but I don't really think it's going to get much worse because it's already gotten really bad, is the buyable section of the game. Jagex has not done a good job at maintaining that, so a lot of skilling methods that used to be pretty expensive are now actually relatively affordable, so that one I would advocate more for, but still, even then, it just means that you can get through the maxing process quicker, which for most people might not even happen at all, so it's kind of a benefit. And remember that all gear in the game over time should trend downward, unless there is a good amount of GP being pumped into the game, which we actually had a time there for a little bit after Warcath where people were kind of scared that too much GP was getting pumped into the game. Now we have kind of the opposite feeling where people are thinking that the prices of everything's going down, so we need to pump more GP into the game, I'd imagine. I don't quite know how to battle with that, but I know that we're never too far off where we probably should be, I think. Also, whenever these gear crashes happen, just know as long as the gear crash is universal, you still have the same buying power. You still can sell the items you had and buy the same items that you would have bought before. So nothing really went wrong. And you're never going to be able to really avoid those in old school RuneScape, because what are you going to do? Are you just going to sell all of your items in your bank whenever you're a little nervous about what's going on in the market? You can do it here and there maybe, but it's really not a useful way to go about the game. So to round it out, the market goes through its ups, it goes through its downs. At the end of it all, if the gear is going to be somehow more affordable to the average player, that's never something I'm going to be opposed to. I would be more fearful if these prices were starting to get out of reach for a lot of the average players. Then that's not as much what you want to see, but personally, I don't see too much of a problem with where we're at. So yeah, that is going to be it for this video. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Any thoughts you have on the market crash, would love to hear them down below. And on top of that, if you want to see more videos like this as soon as I go live, make sure to subscribe. Also, plenty of links down below if you want to check them out. But with that said, hopefully you guys have a wonderful day, and peace.